Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Hi, this is Shohanur Rahman Shohan from Youth Express. I would like to thank all of our guests and our viewers for watching our live today. So we have three guests today in our Youth Talk. First one is Mr. Rich Rubino. He's from Massachusetts, USA, and he's the author of 4 books, and he's also a political analyzer and also a social worker. Second one is Mr. Tyler Harrison Hunt. He is from Christchurch, New York. He's an entrepreneur, social service worker, and he's also a basketball coach. And third one is Mr. Rashid. He is a student and he is studying BBA in North South University, and also he do social activities. Welcome everyone in your show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, sir. So at first, I would like to go to Mr. Rich Rubino.
Yep.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, we know that you are an author and you publish 4 books and you regularly appear in television shows, radio shows. So at first, we would love to know about your books. So what is basically your books? So that type of things we would want to know from you.
Sure. Well, I've always had this kind of congenital interest in kind of the fascinating side of American politics, the intricacies, kind of the inside baseball. So about maybe 8 years ago, I went looking for a book that was about more political trivia, that type of thing, but not just necessarily. In American, we have a presidential system. It was more kind of all-encompassing. So the first book I wrote, because I couldn't find it, was called The Political Bible of Little-Known Facts in American Politics. And then I did a book tour on that, and I was being interviewed. And when I was being interviewed, a lot of people would ask me questions specifically about kind of the funny side and some of the political quotes I had. So then I wrote another book about political quotes in American history and try to put them in context and try to put a picture of each of the either political candidates or the presidents, the Supreme Court justices that we have in the United States. I also wrote a book on the very complicated system, which nobody seems to understand, called the Electoral College in the United States. And the fourth book, my most recent book, is called American Politics on the Rocks, which is just kind of on the bizarre side of American politics. It actually kind of makes American politics fun and humanizes it. And I'm working on another book now on political trivia that I hope to have out by the end of the year, which is kind of all the questions, kind of the obscure questions about American political trivia, political history. So I kind of try to amalgamate communications and politics, and that's kind of my forte, I guess.
Thank you, sir. Stay with us.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
Now we would like go to Mr. Tyler. Mr. Tyler.
Hi, brother. How are we going?
Hello, sir. I'm fine, thank you. So, sir, we would like to know from you that you are from Christchurch, and after the Christchurch attack, you have raised your voice for the people, for peace. So we would love to know about your social works and peace activities, Mr. Tyler.
Sure. So just to sort of remind everyone around the world, on March 15th, a couple of years ago, actually last year, we suffered one of the biggest atrocities in New Zealand's history, and we have lost 51 martyrs from the Christchurch Al-Noor Mosque. Myself being a reverted Muslim and also a native of New Zealand, I found it was a right and essential that somebody from New Zealand and somebody who was deep within the Muslim community raised their voice to make sure that peace and prosperity was prevalent in New Zealand. Just because there was, as of late, there has been a lot of separation and segregation between what seems to be immigrants and countrymen, and that tends to show from all around the world. So myself, after the attack, I've lost a lot of friends myself, and we lost 2 family members in our family, as I married into a Pakistani family. So I wanted to express the positivity of multiculturalism, of unifying multiple faiths and bringing them together, and making sure that everyone's on the same page. New Zealand is a very proud country, and we're really, really good at embracing people from all around the world. We're very reliant, actually, economically also, on refugees and also on immigrants and tourism. Without that, New Zealand wouldn't be a country as they are. So it's been really great for us as New Zealand to come together and make sure that everyone's working together for peace and prosperity, which is not always easy. In particular, after the attack, there was a lot of uproar, as you'd expect. But I think the battle is always going to be trying to express that message of peace, prosperity, and ensuring that race card isn't always pulled. So that's pretty much where I'm standing. So I've gone around the world and talked about that. In particular, been to Germany, and I went around Stuttgart and around Frankfurt, going to about 15 different mosques and talking about security measures and talking about making sure that we treat our brother the same as what we treat our own brother. So it's been great, mate. It's been really, really good. And good things have come out of such an atrocity. So that's me in a nutshell in terms of that area. So it's been great.
Thank you, sir. Stay with us. Now I would like to invite Mr. Rashid. Mr. Rashid?
Yep.
Mr. Rashid?
Oh, are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking with Mr. Rashid.
I thought so. Okay.
I think he's not with us for a technical problem. He'll join us soon. So, Sir Rich.
Yes.
So, you are a political analyzer. So, tell us more about the American political system, the parliamentary system, the upper parliament and the lower house. So, we would like to know from you.
Okay, so American system is a little bit unique. So what we have is first of all, we have separation of powers. So in some systems, the parliamentary system, for example, you have a prime minister. The prime minister is usually an elected member of parliament who's elected by a very small constituency. And then the party that's in power then elects that person to become prime minister. For example, go for a country like Great Britain, for example, the prime minister comes from a very small, what we call in America, what we call district. There they call constituency. Then the people in the political party that controls that chamber then elects that person. What we have in the United States, first of all, we have one election for president of the United States, and Americans vote solely for the person who's running for president of the United States. So usually we have two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. There are alternative parties, but they very rarely compete at a national level. So we have the Democratic Party, which is seen as the center-left party, and we have the Republican Party, which is seen as the center-right party. Obviously, there's sometimes amalgamations, and you get to the point in the American system where you get so far right that you connect with the left. It's kind of like, where the bicycles hit the Mercedes in many respects. Now, in terms of the congressional, on the congressional side, what we have is we have two houses. The United States Senate is made up of 100 members, and they're all represented each state. And there are 50 states in the American political sphere. So, for example, the small state in the country is Wyoming, probably with less than 700,000 people. They have 2 senators. The largest state, California, they have 2 senators. So each state is equal in terms of the United States Senate. Now, in the House of Representatives, what we have is we have 435 congressional districts. And there's one member for each congressional district. So as a result, you have, for example, a state like Texas, you have a different member in the place in Dallas than you have in Austin, whereas in the United States Senate, you have 2 senators to represent the entire state. So very liberal parts of a state like Dallas, Houston, and Austin, you have very liberal members of the the Texas congressional delegation. Then the more conservative parts, you have Republicans usually. There's always some exceptions to that. And then we have what's called the United States Supreme Court. And Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers called it the least dangerous branch. And what happens is there are 9 justices that's not in the Constitution, but they're basically based on congressional statute. Based on statutes, there are 9 Supreme Court justices, And their role, beginning in Marbury versus Madison, its decision in 1803 in the United States, is they're supposed to interpret the Constitution. They're not supposed to make laws. They're supposed to say, essentially, is this law constitutional? And if it does pass constitutional muster, then it accepts it. If it doesn't, then it says essentially it's unconstitutional or it's invalid, and it makes it essentially null and void. But it's just the interesting part of the system you have to remember is that there are three separate branches. And then, now I'll just finish with this. There's also there's state and municipal level. And at the state level, they have the exact same thing. There's a governor and there's a state legislature and legislator and legislature. And usually the state legislature is comprised of two houses. One exception is Nebraska, which has a bicameral legislature. And then they have a judicial system, which is completely different in each state. And we also have territories called like American Samoa, Guam, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. They don't have voting status, but they do have representatives in the House of Representatives who can be on committees, but cannot actually serve, cannot actually vote, rather. So it's a very kind of complex system. And the American people tend to think that every other country is the same way that we are, but we're kind of very sui generis in terms of we have three branches of government that came from basically a guy named Montesquieu back in the 1700s, said this is the way we should have a system. So it's unique, but, obviously it works for us, but we do have a lot of partisan division. And right now we're kind of at that high watermark of a partisan chasm in the United States.
Thank you, sir. Stay with us. Now I would like to introduce our guest, Mr. Rashid. Mr. Rashid, please open your camera and unmute. Mr. Rashid. He's not here. I think he has some technical problems. Okay, I will come to him later. Now, Mr. Tyler Harrison Hunt. He is in a huge technical problem. Okay, it's okay. No, he's
there. He is. There he is.
Okay. Hello, my friend. Hello. You have to unmute the camera. Unmute the sound and camera. Okay. Thank you, sir. Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No, he has some problems. He has some technical problems. Okay, I will come back to him later. So I would like to ask Mr. Tyler. Okay, so my question is, you are a native New Zealander. So
Yep.
Basically, tell me about your tribe, your culture, and one thing that you are a revert Muslim. So what type of challenges you are facing there, and what are the opportunities there working in New Zealand? So that type of things. And also you told me you lost 2 family members in the Christchurch attack, right? So
Yep.
we want to know more about this incident. Mr. Tyler Harrison Hunt.
Okay, sure. That's a lot to pound through, so I'll try and make it worth it. Firstly, New Zealand was founded in 1840, so we were a very young country. Actually, before that, my people, the Maori people, I don't know if anyone's seen the haka before, but the Maori people were the people that were first arrived on New Zealand. People say that they arrived around 1,500 years ago. Some say it's 1,000 years ago. But we actually migrated from what we believe is Hawaii. So everything that we had as Maori, we had in tribes. So we came on large boats. We were actually one of the best navigators in the world because we used the stars, and we were the first to use the navigation method through stars. So we were a traveling people, and I don't know if you guys have seen Moana, but that's exactly pretty much where they got that movie from. So the Maori people were very well established in New Zealand until the English, the French, and the Spanish came, and we were colonized to where actually there were land wars, and the English decided to establish themselves in New Zealand, and there was many years of war and of sorrow. New Zealand actually, surprisingly, has a deeply sad past. But as everyone would expect, England actually took over pretty much 90% of the world around then anyway. So it started from colonization back in the 1800s. They then gave us, decided to give us a treaty after they were losing too many men through the wars due to the Maori people being very, very well experienced in guerrilla warfare. Therefore, they were able to use the land. They were one with the land, and they lost too many men. So that's how New Zealand actually started, believe it or not. After colonization, we weren't allowed to talk, talk our language. So a lot of our people actually lost a lot of our language, but we're actually bringing it back. For a while, it was actually a dying language, which is again is very sad. Now, if we skip forward 160 years, now we're actually classed as Kiwis. We're classed as New Zealanders, but still we have that rooted pride in our culture. As you'd probably see with the haka, with the designs, and for myself, I actually have a tattoo here. That was before I actually converted. And these sort of tattoos you'd see very prevalent in the Māori culture because that's sort of like our passport. You'd probably see different patterns and different things because that shows what tribe we're from. So, for example, when back in the day, obviously they didn't have ID, they didn't have paperwork. So if somebody saw someone unfortunately passed away on the side of the road, they'll know exactly where they're from due to their tattoos. They'll also know their status. So back in the day, a lot of Māori of very high status would have tattoos all over their face. Not very many of us do that anymore nowadays, obviously due to colonization and the stigma over tattoos on the face in Western civilization is probably not very well received in terms of wanting to gain entry into the workforce and whatnot. But there are also very many challenges that came with that colonization, and that is also showing all around the world. For example, the Native Americans, the Aboriginals in Australia. It goes for a long time, and even in particular, India and Pakistan are actually deeply affected by Western civilization, in particular, the England, who were very good at attaining land. So there were a lot of challenges, and there is now today. It actually streams on even after all of these generations. So Māori are trying to claim their culture back, and they've done very well at it, and we've done very well at it. But also the positive things is we're very proud in our culture. We actually have a very big established culture that is going nowhere. We're staying. Language is coming up. Our people are becoming more educated, more well educated. In particular, myself trying to gain knowledge throughout my whole life. And the same is actually it's a ripple effect going on, it was on the downhill slope, and now it's sort of coming back up. So New Zealand is actually made up of about 4.5 million people. That's probably a bit higher now, of many cultures now. And New Zealand is a very inclusive, social, welcoming society. We're a very nice country. I guess you'd call us the Canada between Australia and New Zealand, the Canada to the America. Our government system is very straightforward. It's very similar to the English one, obviously because of the Commonwealth. We have a fantastic Prime Minister in Jacinda Ardern, and she's been absolutely fantastic in ensuring that the people are heard. There are two parties, major parties, which is the Labour Party and the National Party. Both are left and what are seen as right wing, but we'd more think of it as more socially focused and economically focused parties. So they're sort of like that. So it's a very interesting country to be raised in. And personally, I think it's probably one of the best countries in the world at the moment. We've destroyed COVID-19 in its tracks, so everybody is actually back to work. Everybody's back to doing the normal stuff. Thanks to Jacinda Ardern already putting lockdown on us. She was one of the first leaders in the world to actually put lockdown on us. And a lot of people were worried about the economic downfall of our country, but she's actually slowly bringing it back, and she's put in a lot of packages to make sure that the business try to stay alive. But she's also given us more time as families to be able to be together during the lockdown. So the lockdown lasted about 8 weeks, and she pretty much stomped COVID-19 in its tracks. So in a nutshell, that's New Zealand. I'm more than happy to give more, but the next thing is obviously with the attack. So we did lose 2 family members in the attack. Uncle Naeem Rashid and brother Talha, along with 49 other friends and family. They were fantastic people. They were very godly people, and to be honest, the people that actually did pass away were probably the most ready to go. They were there doing their shahada. So, in an Islamic standpoint, there's no better way to go out than to go out in the house of God. So, for us, we tried to put a smile on our face. Obviously, there is sorrow, and obviously there is sadness, and obviously anger, because the person who actually committed this atrocity wasn't a New Zealander; he was from another country. So, that is a very big thing for Christchurch to come into, because in Christchurch we've actually suffered 2 earthquakes too. So we're probably the most resilient city to be able to withstand this atrocity, this act of terrorism. So in a nutshell, New Zealand's a great place to live. New Zealand's a great place to stay. They're an amazing country. We're very lucky here. And I'm very happy here, actually. There's a lot of opportunities here for us and a lot of opportunities for people coming from overseas.
Thank you, sir. Stay with us. Now, I would like to go to Mr. Rashid. Mr. Rashid.
Hello. Hello,
Hello.
guys.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes,
Can you hear me, sir? Okay.
Sorry for
Thank
being
you.
late. I'm facing some technical problems, so that's why I'm getting late.
Okay, it's okay,
Thank
sir.
you.
So let me introduce Mr. Rashid. He's also my classmate. We used to be in same college. So we are friends. Basically, we are friends. So, sir, I would like to know from you about your social service, social activity. We know that you are studying BV in NSU, and you are also with the subcommittee in NSU Social Service Club. So we would like to know more about your club activities, about your social activities, how you are contributing in the society. Mr. Rashid Khan.
Thank you, Sean. So basically, my journey was started in 2018 with NSU SSC. So I joined my club after 2 semesters of the university. So before that, I have no idea about clubbing, what to do with clubbing, and I have 0 idea about clubbing. So I used to hanging out with my friends and classmates here and there. So my time was passing actually without doing nothing. So that what I did, I actually wasting my time without doing nothing. So at the time I realized that I have to do something for my career which can help me in my future workplace. So after passing 2 semesters, one of my friends from my one course, so he suggests me that what are you doing, mate? So are you involving with any club or some any organizations? I said no. So he said do some clubbing. It's a great thing to do, and it's a great way to meet new people and get way to make a good network in university. So uh, uh, these things looks very interesting to me. So he was from another club. So that time there was no recruitment program of any club. So in 2018, at the beginning of spring semester, there was a recruitment booth of NSU SSC. So the recruitment booth was actually looks very interesting to me, because all the structure and all the things was social related. So I was thinking that this is the thing I can do easily without any hesitate, and doing social service is a great work. So I took the recruitment form, and with another friend. So I was called for interview. and that was very first interview in my life that I faced with NSU SSC. That was a great experience, and fortunately, they recruited me as a probationary member. Then, the most important thing was the NSCSS orientations. So here I found that the leaders of the clubs were very pioneers and were very smart, and they they are sharing their club experience and their social related activities with us. So so their experience motivated me so much to continue the club. So after this, the orientation session, I actually realized that no, these the things is very good, and I can do it at any hesitate. So doing social service is always a great work. So I started doing clubbing from then, and I am here till now, and it's been almost 2.5 years, and in last 2 years I have made lots of friends. I have built a good connection. I have built a good connection with corporate leaders in different companies of Bangladesh, and I have now many friends in my club. So I think this is the very good platform to meet new people, to build your personal qualities, to build your personal skills. So I am very lucky to be with NSU SSC and being a member, and I feel proud that uh, through NSU SSC I help the societies. I can help the human through their activities and their events. So that's all.
I would like
Thank
to share one quote. If you inspire people to dream, if you inspire people to do more, then you are a true leader, and you are
Yes,
doing a great job.
thank you.
I wish best of luck for you and your club and all the members. Stay with us. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Rich Rubino.
Yep.
So, I have a question about the parliamentary system.
Yep.
So, you have upper parliament and lower parliament. In the lower parliament, you have 545 seats, right?
There are 435 voting members. Then there are 5
Right.
delegates who do not have the power to vote but can serve on committees.
Right. So, from them, 100 goes to the upper parliament, right? The senators.
The Senate, right? They don't. Usually we don't call it in the United States. We don't call it a parliament. We call them chambers. So most people would know. They'd say the House chamber and the Senate chamber.
Right. So you are saying that basically there are two main parties in USA. The left one is the Democrat, and
Yep.
the right one is the Republican, right?
Yes.
I can understand politicians like Bernie Sanders are socialist left. What about Michael Bloomberg? They are
Yes.
not left.
Here's the thing. So Bernie Sanders is called the Democratic Socialist. Now, the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders is actually he was not a member of the Democratic Party. When he was elected in its very small state of Vermont, the second smallest state in population in the entire country. He was elected as a senator. So he was first elected to the House, then he was elected to the Senate. And when he was in the House, the state is so small that they literally only have one at-large congressional district. By contrast, California has 53 congressional districts. So Bernie Sanders comes from a very small state, but he was never a member of the Democratic Party. So when he got elected, what happened is essentially the Democratic Party sometimes would put up their own candidate. Eventually, the Democratic Party started endorsing him because he was able to get elected. He's probably one of the 2 or 3 most liberal members of the United States Senate, maybe the most liberal member of the United States Senate. Now, Michael Bloomberg. So the Democratic Party, it kind of basically the spectrum goes from far left to center, and Michael Bloomberg is basically a centrist. Now, he was originally a Democrat. When he ran for mayor in 2001, he became a Republican in part because this is very interesting. So the Democratic side, there were too many candidates running. So the Republican side, since there are very few actually registered Republicans in New York, he said, this is the fast route. So he circumvented the system, and he ran in the Republican primary. He beat one guy named Herman Badillo, a former congressman that would be Democrat that became Republican, actually. So he gets elected that way. And then when he becomes mayor, he moves over and becomes an independent. So he becomes independent. An independent is somebody who's not a member of a political party. It can be essentially anybody. It can be far right, far left, centrist. And then Bloomberg decides he's going to run for president. So Bloomberg then goes back to his old political affiliation and becomes a Democrat. So,
oh my God.
but here's the thing. Here's what's interesting about Bloomberg. When Bill Clinton was president, he was also a centrist. And the part of the reason that Bill Clinton got elected is that the left wing of the Democratic Party had lost 3 elections in a row. So the Democratic Party in 1980, Jimmy Carter was running for re-election. They lost. They only won that year. They literally won 6 out of 40 states. 1984, they nominated Walter Mondale. And the Republicans were able to caricature Walter Mondale as too liberal. Walter Mondale won his home state of Minnesota and the District of Columbia, and that was it. 1988, Michael Dukakis, a governor from Massachusetts, which is considered a very liberal state, wins 10 of 40 states. So the Democratic Party at that time says, we know what, we need somebody who's actually electable, who does not only appeal to the left wing of the Democratic Party. So they nominated Bill Clinton. And why is Bill Clinton a centrist? In part, he came from a state called Arkansas. And Arkansas is a very conservative state. It had gone for Republican Ronald Reagan. It had become for Republican George H.W. Bush. Bill Clinton had been elected in 1978, 1982, 1986, and 1990. So he had more centrist positions. So people in the Democratic Party thought this guy can actually get elected. So Bill Clinton serves 8 years. Now, since then, the Democratic Party has moved to the left. But what Michael Bloomberg is he's essentially a Clintonite. He's somebody who's more further to the center, somebody who's not necessarily hostile toward corporate interests, for example, someone on foreign policy issues who's more interventionist, whereas Bernie Sanders is someone who essentially is more non-interventionist, says the United States should try to stay out of these kind of foreign wars. So that's what Michael Bloomberg was. So Michael Bloomberg ran in the primary. Obviously, he had a lot of money, and he ended up winning no states with all the money he spent. He did win one territory, American Samoa, which very few people have heard of. It's got about 55,000 people because Bloomberg actually put 4 staffers out there, paid staffers. If you look at how many votes he actually got in the American Samoan primary, 175. So all the money that he spent, then he landed up dropping out, and now he's putting all of his money toward Joe Biden. Joe Biden is further to the center than Bernie Sanders. And the biggest obstacle I think Joe Biden has is trying to hold as many Bernie Sanders supporters, saying, you know what, I'm not the best candidate for the liberals, but I'm certainly better than Donald Trump, and I'm also better than the Green Party. Now, this is one thing we do have in the United States. It's called the Green Party, and in 2000, they nominated Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader, a lot of people believe that the 2.7% or so support that he got may have cost the Democratic Party's candidate, Al Gore, the election, because essentially people on the left had another option. They said, we think Al Gore is too far to the center, too much of a Clintonite, so we're going to vote for Ralph Nader. So the Democratic Party this year is going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that Joe Biden is palatable to the left. There is a Green Party candidate named Howard Hawkins, and potentially this is a very close election. The biggest trepidation the Democrats have is that Joe Biden will lose because just that very small sliver of very liberal voters will say, we think Joe Biden's too centrist, too corporatist. We're going to vote for a Democrat. But yeah, Michael Bloomberg would be somebody that would have had that same problem. But, he's essentially, he has the money. So he spent all the money in that presidential campaign, and it didn't quite work out well for him. But obviously now he's going to use a lot of that philanthropy to try to get Joe Biden elected. And obviously he has a lot of hostility toward Donald Trump, which, by the way, they both come from the same city, New York City. New York City is a place where Donald Trump grew up. He grew up in Queens. He's very unpopular in the New York City. It's a very liberal part of the country. Trump was actually used to be very liberal. He transmogrified, we say. He changed his ideology, became very conservative. Yep.
Let me add something. Trump used to be a Democrat, right? And he became a Republican.
He used to give money. If you look, he used to give money to Nancy Pelosi, who's the Democratic Speaker of the House, now his arch adversary. He gave money to Chuck Schumer, senator from New York, who is the minority leader in the United States Senate. He changed his positions on a lot of issues, and it's really genius because you have somebody from New York City, somebody who's a pretty secular person, who's now appeals to people who are very conservative and very Christian in very parts of Alabama, Mississippi, the more conservative parts of the country. So it's really kind of a fascinating phenomenon, and it's ironic that he's become the tribune of the conservative bloodline of the Republican Party, when he came from the exact opposite ideology and the opposite region of the country. It's a very fascinating epiphenomenon, I think.
Right. So, I was listening a powerful speech of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh yes.
So she's basically Latin, right?
She's very left-wing. She got her start, at least in presidential politics. She worked for Bernie Sanders when he first ran for president in 2016, and then she got elected to Congress in 2018, in part by, this is one of the 435 districts. She beat a person named Joe Crowley, who was more centrist, and nobody could believe that she was able to win. Joe Crowley was number 4 in the leadership of the Democratic Party, a potential speaker candidate, who was spending an inordinate amount of time out of his state trying to campaign for other Democrats so that eventually when Pelosi retired, he would become speaker. He sent a surrogate to debate her, for example, and as a result, no one could believe that she actually won. Now you have this freshman congressperson who, other than Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, is probably the most known member of the United States House of Representatives, which is really unprecedented because she's still a freshman member who was just elected in 2018.
Okay. What about recently elected Congressman Mr. Jamal Bowman and Ilhan Omar? Like the young leaders, they're coming in the Congress.
Yep. So Jared in Mr. Bowman's case, what he did is he did the same thing. AOC. That's what we call her AOC because her name is so complex. So what he did is he defeated someone named Elliot Engel in the state of New York. Elliot Engel was an incumbent who was a little more conservative. For example, he had voted for the Iraq War. He had voted for the Gulf War. He was part of the Democratic Party establishment. So the left wing of the Democratic Party consolidated. AOC actually supported Mr. Bowman in his primary challenge against Engel. So now Bowman, when I see how a congressman-elect, Engel is actually still in the Congress until the end of the term. So, technically, they also have a general election. You have in America, you have the primary, and then the general election. A primary is everyone from the same party running against each other. Then in the general election, the nominees of the parties run against each other. But in that congressional district is so Democrat, so it'll be very hard for a Republican to win. So he's effectively the congressman-elect for all intents and purposes. In the case of Omar, she comes from She comes from the Minneapolis congressional district, and she's a refugee from Somalia.
Right.
And she's interesting because this past election, she was one of the she was obviously very young. She's become kind of a lightning rod in the country, in part because she is very left and because she has had some criticism, for example, of the Israeli government. And in the United States, it's almost kind of a taboo to criticize the Israeli government. For example, she's also seen as a socialist, which to the Republican Party in the United States, they've been doing this going back to Franklin Roosevelt in 1932. What they do is they try to associate anybody in the Democratic Party with the far left of the Democratic Party. The Democrats do the same thing. They try to associate anyone who's kind of a centrist Republican with the more conservative elements. So what Joe Biden is trying to do, in the case of AOC, with the case of this, Ayanna Pressley, a congresswoman from Massachusetts, Congressman Tlaib from Michigan, they're all members of what's called the Squad. And they're 4 very liberal members of the Democratic Party. And Trump is trying to say that they are tantamount to every other Democrat. So in the case of Joe Biden, who has the most centrist record, he'll say something to the effect of, Joe Biden is their enabler. In other words, when Joe Biden gets elected, AOC is really going to be calling the shots. So he's trying to run against people because he's trying to run against AOC. He's trying to run against Tlaib. He's trying to run against people who come from very liberal congressional districts who could never get elected themselves nationally. Just like the Democrats do the same thing. If there was a far-right congressman, they would say that the far-right congressman is really going to be running the show, and he would just be he'd be the overlord, and the Republican president would just be their enabler. So that's the strategy that Trump is trying to employ. That's why so many people in Bangladesh know who these people are now, because Trump is making them household words.
Yeah, Trump is very popular politician. Even he's look at funny way, but he is very popular. We used to see him in WWE when we used to be kids.
Oh yeah,
Mr.
Yes.
Vince McMahon. So he's very popular before become the president. He used to be very popular.
He's
fighting with Mr. Vince McMahon.
He's fascinating because he's the first president we've ever had who did not come from either political background, being a governor or senator, or a military background. He came, out of business, and he came out of reality TV. We've never had a president like this. It doesn't happen in the American system. Although
we used to see him in Richie Rich when I used to be kid. I used to watch him in Richie Rich, like that type of programs, cartoon. He become someday he become president. So
you remember?
This is very inspired.
There was a governor of Minnesota named Jesse Ventura. Jesse the Body Ventura, and he was a WWE fighter, and he gets elected in 1998, and no one could believe he gets elected. You have the Democrat and Republican Party. People were saying he was just a spoiler. He was a third-party candidate. He garners 36% of the vote, and now Jesse Ventura is president. So everyone's but he was actually a mayor of a city before that, Brooklyn Park. In Donald Trump's case, he wasn't elected to the Cemetery Commission, and now all of a sudden he's president of the United States. So the American people are still kind of baffled in that election. It's so unprecedented.
Okay, sir, stay with us. I will come back to you later. So it's getting too much political because all of our viewers are youth, so say they're not very much interested. So I will come back to you later. Stay with us.
Yes.
Now I would like to ask Mr. Rashid.
About that topic,
Yeah, he's very, very good analyzer. I'm also loving it. That's why I'm asking you political questions. Mr. Rashid. Mr. Rashid.
There he is.
Hello.
Okay, sir. Okay, you told us you are working in social activities. So what do you think? How it will help you to become the leaders in future in our country, and how you can contribute in the society in our country for the youth, for the people, for the nation, Mr. Rashid?
So basically, when you are looking for a job or when you want to be a good person or in the entire world, so you have to be more on your CV, or you have to be more on your qualification rather than your academic activities. So to me, to make the most of any opportunity to pursue like co-curricular activities or extracurricular activities that will help you to build up your qualities, and that will help you to build up your skills. So getting involving in clubs or doing some part-time job or part-time work, volunteering is a very good way to meet new people and had very fun time in the university with your friends. So I'm sure you will strike a very healthy balance between your life and the social life and between your student life. So this kind of activities, actually social related activities, extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, will help you to become a good candidate for as a graduate, and these things will make you the most skillful candidate for your future job. And this kind of activities are generally the come from your inner heart, so nobody can pressure you to do these kinds of activities. So if you are not comfortable with these kinds of activities, I must say you don't go to there, because you need dedication, you need hard work, and you need other kinds of motivation to your work. So nowadays all the employers want a graduate or a student who have a range of skills in their CVs rather than their academic results. So doing these kind of activities like social activities and co-curricular activities will give you a chance to build up these skills. So to me, it's a great opportunity to join these kinds of activities and help you to reach a good peak in your career. And to me, when you are doing social related activities or clubbing or volunteering, so somehow it will help you to build your personalities, personal qualities, and whenever you are get into a job, these things will help you to be a good employer there, or you can go, wherever you can go, you need to be the experience first. So without experience, you cannot survive any platform with only your academic results. So I must say the younger students who are getting admitted in university who are freshers, they must join club, they must do some co-curricular and extracurricular activities, they must do some volunteering hours to build up their skills, and that helps to build their personal qualities, that helps to build their leadership skills, communication skills, etc.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Mr. Tyler Harrison Hunt. Okay, so can you hear me?
Yep.
So we used to, we are discussing about how Mr. Donald Trump become president from WWE or like that from business. So you are basically entrepreneur, right, sir?
Sorry?
You are entrepreneur, and also you are the basketball coach of Lincoln University. So we would like to focus more on your life, how you are, what you are doing, how you are contributing in the society, and what's your future plan to contribute for the society and the Muslim Ummah?
Sure. So my passion for, I guess, started with my passion for people, and that started at a very young age. I always told myself that I didn't want to work with anyone, so I tried to find problems in society and try and address them and fix them. And that's technically what an entrepreneur is. That's technically what a business person is. They try and find a problem and solve it. So for me, I tried to create sort of a life of passion. I'm not very money focused, although that is a great byproduct of what I do. But I'm more about being people focused. And my current focus is particularly in the basketball realm. I'm a huge basketball fan. I've played high level basketball since I was a young teenager, and wanted to create a job for myself where basketball would pay me a good amount of money, and I get to help kids and anyone out really throughout their lives. I've found that basketball is a great vehicle for all walks of life and all ages and all wallets. In particular, basketball is a very accessible sport. So I really wanted to make sure that I was getting into the right communities. So I have this thing that I call the Robin Hood effect. I don't know if you've heard about Robin Hood, where you take from the rich and give to the poor.
Yep.
I don't really like to call my clients poor, but it's sort of that philosophy of taking from those that are a bit more well off and giving back to those that are in the lesser resourced communities. So for me, I'm a basketball skills trainer. So I took the model actually from America. America is actually a huge part of the Western civilization, Western society, where they're actually a giant reality TV show. We're looking on our news and America's right in our face.
It's everywhere.
All of our TV's American. Everything's American in New Zealand, really. So, and obviously the NBA is a big part of the world. So even in Bangladesh, there's a lot of NBA fans, which I've recognised. But
we watch cricket.
Yeah, cricket.
More
Yeah,
cricket.
definitely.
New Zealand
Definitely
cricket.
We're in a Pakistani household, so we love beating Bangladesh. Yeah. But
no India.
It's great, man. It's
they
great.
love to beat India.
That's it. So sport is a great tool for us to use, not only in business, but to bring people together. And I found that a very good vehicle to use for both religious and non-religious communities. But I'm not technically focused on the religious part. I'm more focused on the social part of bringing people together and not seeing a color, not seeing a race, not seeing a creed. You just have a basketball and you're ready to bounce it with your brother or sister. So that's what I'm focused on at the moment. I'm also focused on small stocks, in particular the New Zealand economy. I'd like to see that come up, and it's a very promising economy. China does have a large grasp on the economy in New Zealand, but we're actually pretty good at making sure that we keep the majority of everything that we have, which is it's very interesting because the media again tells you a lot of stuff about different countries, and China is one of those ones that are actually climbing up the ranks very quietly, might I add, but they are actually making a big dent in the world economics at the moment. Another thing that I'm working on this year is also in real estate. Real estate's a great tool for us to use. In particular, I'm trying to look for a basketball facility, a high performance multi-sport facility actually, where we'll have a gym, we'll have weights room, it'll have a youth area, youth space, where people can come, enjoy their time, and take off. I actually went on a trip, rest in peace Kobe, but I went on a trip to America, went to Cali, and I went to the Mamba Academy, and that was, to be honest, man, I bawled my eyes out as soon as I got there, but I just loved America, and I hung out with the NBA team, the LA Clippers.
Yep.
That's my favorite team. So I hung out with them, talked to the staff, and took some tips from them, and that was great fun. So basketball's sort of been my world at the moment, but there are other obviously side hustles you'd call You never have one hand dipped in one pot. It's always just multiple pots, licking your fingers full of honey. So, but so in terms of the basketball side, I'm actually the head coach of the Lincoln University men's and women's basketball program, which would be equivalent to a Division III college program.
Yep.
So we give out around 25 scholarships a year. I go around, I scout around the country. I get to see different things, different aspects of the game. I get to pick my assistant coaches, my staff, and it's just great. It's just fantastic. It's awesome. I'm a pretty young coach, so I'm 29 years old. So being a head coach of that program is a challenge within itself. But it's something that I'd never, ever turn down ever again. I mean, you've got to grind. So no matter what age you are, you see AOC killing it over there. No matter what age is nothing but a number. I mean, I started trying to coach at 18 years old. On top of that, trying to start businesses and study. So I've done my postgrad in applied science. So I've just always had my hands in different pots. And if you're standing still, you're doing something wrong. It's essentially what life's about. If you're doing nothing, you're doing something wrong. And my grandfather used to say, if you're not working, you're not living. So, and he didn't actually mean working 9 to 5. He meant if you're not working on something, if you're not gaining that knowledge, no matter where it is. So, for example, if you're looking at my life, it would be studying, obviously, Islam and Islamic principles in terms of the law and the rights that go along with that, and trying to see where the Sharia law can actually integrate with the Western way, because there are pros and cons to both. So finding a middle ground, again, as Rich says, is probably the most valuable aspect of where we are. And again, that idea and that concept of balance and in terms of everything in life and giving your time to something, you got to have a balance for everything. So that's the basketball aspect of that. In terms of the community stuff, so I am actually always going out. I'm also I give free sessions to schools and young players, and I give talks like this quite a lot, in particular to a lot of the youth around the world. So I'm a part of the World Muslim Communities Council. I'm the New Zealand representative for them. So every year we go to Abu Dhabi and talk about youth issues and try and address them. It's quite funny when you're in that political, well, not really necessarily just political, but when you're in that sort of space, there's a lot of talk and no do. So hopefully we can change that. I'm not much of a talker. I'm more of a doer, but I'm very good at talking too. But
Inshallah.
It's one of those things, man. So that's what we're doing sort of internationally, and in terms of locally, I'm very youth focused. So we help run youth groups. One of the big things that I love to run is something called Midnight Basketball, where on a Friday night in New Zealand, we are per capita, we are number 1 in the world in youth suicide rates. For some reason, youth can't find an identity. They're not happy, and they're unfortunately, committing suicide. So we're trying to address that, and there's also the obvious thing about youth crime, and that's prevalent around the world too. Not one country's left out of that one. Again, that's a epidemic within itself. But on a Friday night is probably their most productive night. So what I've done is I've said, okay, well, let's get these guys into a basketball court. So I feed everyone. Everyone gets food. They get a nice full dinner, kind of full stomach. We bring someone in of value. So, for example, an ex-gang member talking about not getting into gangs. We talk about, again, an ex-gang member talking about handling money is a big one. And then they just play basketball for 4 hours, and then we drop them off at home. So it's just a nice little concept that we like to have to help get kids off the streets and make a difference. But that's it in a nutshell, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So stay with us. Sir, I would like to go to Mr. Rich Rubino. Sir, if Mr. Donald Trump can become president from a reality star, from a WW, so Do you have any advice for us, your Bangladeshi viewers? Do you want to inspire us, advise us anything? If Mr. Donald Trump can become president.
I'm
So
all
do you
ears,
have
man.
any advice for us?
I can't
I
wait
lost
for
the
this
audio for a
answer.
minute. I lost the audio for a minute.
I said Mr. Donald Trump, he was a reality star.
Yep.
He used to come in WWE and suddenly he become the president of the United States. So
Oh yeah.
most of your viewers are from Bangladesh, and most of your viewers are youth. So do you have any advice, or do you want to inspire us?
I would say, yeah, if you could, if anything you could do to get on a reality television show. It actually started, it started in the United States. It goes back, well, I mean, just recently, it goes back to, we had a show called The Real World. And then we had, which was about, essentially, they would take about 6 people, MTV ran it, and they put them in a house, and they'd be from, a very heterogeneous background, and they'd get into fights and everything. And then you had another show called The Jersey Shore, which became an international phenomenon. And they basically put a bunch of people in a house, and then you could see kind of the controversies. But in Trump's case, what Trump realizes is that he would say it's about ratings as opposed to, say, poll numbers. If you notice what he does, even now when he tweets, people say, why does he still tweet? He'll still tweet when he has a press conference. He'll say, this is the ratings that we got for today's press conference. And I think that it's interesting because what he did too is he brought a lot of people into the political process that were very either disaffected. They didn't like the idea. They didn't like American politics. They thought it was just too kind of boring in many respects to be blunt about it. Or they just thought, these are all a bunch of, stuffed shirts, politicians. He comes into the process and he makes it entertaining. So there are a lot of people who maybe don't know what his ideology is. They don't know where he stands, but they say, oh, I liked him, on The Apprentice. And also before he was on The Apprentice, by the way, I mean, he was obviously a businessman. He had a football league. He had casinos. So a lot of people know him from that. And you got to remember, this is what you got to remember on every American, I guess you'd say what we call the vox populi, the general population, don't always fit in ideological boxes where you have to be all the way to the right or you have to be all the way to the left. A lot of people will simply look at the specific candidates and they'll say, without knowing where they stand or what their ideology is, they'll say, I like that guy, I don't like that guy. That guy's entertaining. In some case, they might say, that person is even, is good looking. He has a good demeanor to him. And in Trump's case, a lot of it was that kind of entertainment factor. But the other thing, though, I'll just say this: a lot of people who were going to vote for Hillary Clinton ended up not going to the polls because they thought that she had it in the bag. They looked at the polls. The polls showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win. So the other thing is, a lot of people who are giving money who would normally give money to the Democratic candidates, instead of what we call benefactors, they gave their money to Senate candidates and House candidates, thinking, why would I give money to Hillary Clinton? She's going to win anyways. What's the point? And Hillary Clinton, what she did, and this is a great piece of advice, is go everywhere. Don't take anything for granted. She did not go to the state of Wisconsin, a very critical swing state. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, sir. We are running out of time. Mr.
Yes.
Rashid Khan, do you have any advice? You have 30 seconds. 30 seconds, sir. Do you have any advice, or do you want to add anything? You have to unmute, sir. You are already 10 seconds finished. We cannot hear you. Okay. At first, fix your camera. Okay. Mr. Tyler Harrison Hunt, do you have any advice for your Bangladeshi viewers?
Absolutely. If you're youth, just do it. Find a passion and do it. That's what I did. It paid off. It's been really well. And lastly, trust in God. Whether God looks like Allah or God looks like God.
Right.
It's one of those things that you have to do is just find faith. And if you're not godly, find faith within yourself. It's really big that you guys do something. Just do.
We get Mr. Rashid begging. Mr. Rashid. Oh, he lost his sound again. Okay, Mr. Rich Rubino, do you have any advice for your Bangladeshi viewers?
No, I would say pretty much the same thing. I would also, I would say trying to find a certain niche, and if you can find any sort of connections, if you can kind of amalgamate two different fields. For me, I like the idea of broadcasting, and I like the idea of politics. Try to kind of find a way to connect different things. I think that's in many ways. I think that's where geniuses, when you see something over here, you see something over there. It's a philosophy called the eclecticism. You try to somehow amalgamate them. You try to combine those or combine them. And then essentially that's what an entrepreneur does. I think you try to make your own, you kind of make your own reality, and never listen to someone says that only the establishment, that you have to be within these kind of boundaries. I think the smartest people in life are the people who think outside the box, who come up with something that people have never thought of before, and they say, "Oh, that's a good idea," as opposed to the people who say we have to think this certain way, and never listen to anybody. When people tell you how to think, try to think for yourself and try to come to any conclusions yourself, as opposed to listening to what other people saying. This is how you should think, because and never follow a party line. Always try to follow your own line, and just try to come up with whatever you can come up with your own conscience, and that would be my recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rashid. No, he lost his voice. Maybe we have to end the show now. And thank you all my guests, all of you joining us. I would like to thank you again. So thank you all of you, and stay happy. Thank you.